Okay, I'd like to give a big welcome to my guest right now. He is a filmmaker, director, writer, serial killer in some movies. You will find that out. I have the one, the only Vincent DiSanti. Thank you for coming on Haunters Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh man, like congratulations automatically for the million views that this sucker
Mm.
Never Hike Alone 2 has gotten. You must be thrilled to get that within like its first 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, it's a big surprise. I mean, I knew that there would be backers there. I knew that there would be interest there. I knew I'd maybe get up to like Dylan's just did 100,000 in the first weekend. I was like, okay, that's good tracking. If we're doing that, that means we're doing the good things.
Right.
I figured Never Hike Alone 2 with the built-in audience and it being a feature that it could do a little bit better, maybe 200, 250 to get the first weekend out. And we did that, but it ended up, I don't know, got into I don't know, the algorithm or whatever that is. I don't
Right.
really pay attention too much to that stuff. I just worry about what I make. So
Yeah.
that's usually to my detriment, honestly. But I just, it caught wind. And then all of a sudden we were going from, we were averaging, I think 100 and probably like 50 to 60,000 plays over the weekend. And then all of a sudden it literally in 48 hours, we were getting counts of like 400,000, 450,000. I think it was the max. And then it started to ramp back down, but to get all the way up to a million within the first 8 days is a big surprise. I mean, a million for small channels is a big number. I
Oh,
know
for
that like
sure.
Dead Meat's kill count of this will probably get a million in the first 10 minutes, but and burn me to death. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it'll
Right.
also drive traffic to us, things like that. But for a brand that's up and coming and these films that started with, I want to say our first weekend of Never Hike Alone, we got around somewhere around 40,000 views for Never Hike Alone
Right.
1. And then it
Right.
slowly took about a year and change to get up to a million. I mean, it was a long haul.
Hmm.
And then we got it and we've been proud of it. We've since hit 4 million with that one. So to hit a million in the first, 8 days with this, we're already up to 1.15 million,
Right.
10 days in. And then, now it's coasting at like 50,000 plays a day,
Right.
which, that's going to add up. And hopefully we'll just keep tacking up numbers and showing studios that this is what fans want and hopefully get a chance to take a crack at the real thing one day.
I'm glad you said that because when I watched it and saw that it was like feature length, I
Mhm.
was so excited because this movie feels just like a Friday the 13th movie. I don't know how exactly you were able to encompass the 80s feel with like the way movies are shot today, but it all felt so connected. Like, did you have that process going in? Did you think about, okay, I'm trying to go for retro, but I need to make sure like I have all these gorgeous shots?
I think it was kind of a product of it being an independent production where we're limited. I mean,
Mm,
there are certain things that we can do with the budget that we had, but at the same time, being as big of a film as we were, shooting 15, 16 days on such a small budget, um, our setups and things had to be pretty simple,
mm,
but still clever. And so I think
right.
that that's where the retro feel comes in because we don't get to do a lot of the things that modern films do where they put a camera on a techno crane and they're flying it around and you got a steady cam doing these long single takes that are going all through the shots. When you try to do those things at an independent level, they don't come out as solid. And even some of the things that we do, I'll notice it saying like working on a production that's like $1 million production and how like crane move works or how camera movement works or how drone movement works. And what we do, we're doing our best to replicate that with what we have. And so when you look back at the 80s films, there's stuff that is doable today with today's technology that it took the industry standard technology back in the 80s to achieve. So we've
Hmm.
caught up from the independent market to about that level. Plus, we wanted it to sort of have that feel. We were taking a lot of inspiration from the older movies, and in fact, I jokingly have said this a bunch of times, but like I was basically making a kaiju movie. And so
Hmm.
I just got into this mood of making a kaiju film. And I started to treat Tommy and Jason like monsters,
You're right.
each going to their respective corners and, plotting their course and then coming together at certain moments of the film for fights and then going away from each other and the mayhem that happens in between.
Hmm.
It really just sort of lent itself to that. So I went to that sort of style. And then I think the rest of it's just my natural aesthetic. I grew up on 80s movies. I grew up on 80s action. There's a lot
Hmm.
of action in this movie. So I took a lot from the inspiration that I had as a just a film watcher growing up as a kid.
Right.
But then with the advent of the technology that we do have, we were able to push it even further.
Right. Is is it weird to kind of someone you grew up watching Tom Matthews and now you're writing a complete arc for him like through these three films, Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, Never Hike Alone 2, is it wild to sit there and actually, man, I'm directing Tommy. Like I'm giving him a very proper send off through these films.
I mean, it's a dream come true. I didn't think that when I made Never Hike Alone 1 before I had signed Tom that I'd even get a chance to work with him. And then when we got a chance to work with him, I thought it was a good chance to prove that we sort of had, a good idea of how to handle these characters. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, when he said yes, I mean, the wheels started turning. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
where do we go from here? I mean, even for that short little cameo in Never Hike Alone, I had to make it make sense. I didn't just want to throw him in there and just not think about it.
Right.
I wanted to do what the franchise had never done, which is think ahead. Think like, hey, if I get another chance to do this,
Yeah.
where does Tommy fit into this world, and what is his story, and why hasn't he seen Jason, and like all of these things. And so like all of these doubts that I would cast on a storyline like that as a fan, I
Mm-hmm.
cast on myself. And so I have to come up with good answers to kind of answer my own questions before I will go forward with an idea. So it was it's like when I had to come up with the backstory of him being a paramedic, and knowing that I was really trying to jump off the Paramount series that I do count 7 and 8. A lot of people will say, hey, Never Hike Alone 2 is a direct sequel to part 6. Yeah, kind of. But 7
Mm-hmm.
and 8 happened too. We don't
Right.
really talk about them. They're like the stepchildren that
Right.
sleep in the
Right.
basement, that we don't give much credence to, but they're still there. There's still
Yeah.
events that happened. We
Tina
can't really
happened.
explain what happened. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um, so we just sort of ran with that, and it was like, where was Tommy? Where was Tommy
Mm-hmm.
through all of this? Because obviously, if Jason's back, Tommy's going to want to be involved. But by the time everything happened with Tina in part 7, he shows up too late.
Right.
And if he was there and he didn't have access and he wasn't a paramedic yet, he would see the paramedics, he would see the fire department, he would see all these people behind the crime scene markers, realizing that's my ticket in. That's how
Right.
I get past this crime scene marker, and Rick can't do anything about it. So
Right.
lo and behold, he goes through all this training, he becomes an EMT, he's working in the ambulance, and what happens? Jason catches a boat and takes off to Manhattan.
Right.
And so it I think one of the things I loved about the story that I was building for Tommy is that he's this Don Quixote, just like charging at windmills, and he's just whiffing.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how long I've been waiting to show people the opening of Never Hike Alone 2, when he's
Mm-hmm.
going up into the mountains and he's kicking down the doors and he's looking for Jason and he's looking for this fight that he can't find. And it's
Mm-hmm.
driving him crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, as long as he's doing this, he's just drawing more and more attention to himself. He's becoming more and more of a suspect to Rick. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
sort of by design. I think Jason wants it that way. Jason doesn't want to face off against Tommy because he knows that even if he beats Tommy, it's going to be a fight. And
Right.
Tommy's going to land some blows. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like Apollo Creed and Rocky 2. Yeah, he wants the rematch, but does he really want the rematch? Like,
Right.
Jason's
Right.
happy kind of hiding in the background. So with Tom, we had to come up with this excuse for him to not just be a Jason hound, finding Jason every other week and fighting him and continuing this thing, that it had to be a genuine surprise when Jason showed up. So it was very important at the beginning of Never Hike Alone 2 to set this tone that Tommy's giving up. Tommy is just sort of seeing that, like, he's not doing any good. He's been going out there, he hasn't found Jason. Then what does he do? He bumps into, and he realizes all of his searching, all of his fighting, and all of his posturing and, puffing his chest out didn't help this woman's child from surviving a day in the woods.
Right.
And he's failed another person. He's failed another person in town. This innocent woman who just wanted to bring her son to safety, ends up losing her kid, and how Tommy feels on his watch. So I felt like through that arc, we had a real character. We didn't have a caricature, which I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, people would sort of expect, like Tommy, the gun wielding maniac who's running around the woods shooting Jason and like being a badass and over like Rambo. Like, that's not Tommy.
Right.
Tommy's a normal person.
Right.
Like, Tommy is not Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween Ends, where she's a trained assassin training in some backyard home. He's a normal dude who's got to pay rent and like
Yeah.
got to put a life together, who's dealing with guilt.
It's
And I
kind
think
of
that
like
that was much
the
more
Die
interesting
Hard.
to kind of not overpower him and make him fallible and show that he's a
Mm-hmm.
broken person. And then
Mm-hmm.
through the process of telling the story of Never Hike Alone 2, how he heals these wounds, how he makes up for those losses, and how he puts everything on the line, his life, to save this town and make up for what he did, and him to admit it too, to admit that he screwed up, to admit that this is all his fault, is it's a long journey for someone to make, especially someone, Tommy at this age is towards the end of his life. And so he's living with all these regrets. So I
Right.
think that grounding him and making him more relatable and more fallible made him a much better character versus just making him some hero who swoops in at the last minute trying to save the day.
We talked a lot about Tommy Jarvis, but on the other side, Ghost Jason, who you
Mhm.
play, like, what is it like donning the hockey mask and getting into that mode? Like, you've already done it in two of your other movies. Now you're here with
Mhm.
this final fight. What is it like being Jason?
It's a lot of fun. And in fact, technically, I played Jason 5 times. I
Five?
played him. Yeah. So actually, 6, 7. I don't know. I've played him a bunch of times. So I'm just counting him in my
Kane
head.
Hodder's going to be pissed.
So there's Never Hike Alone 1.
Right.
And then I did the Disappear music video, which was I think
Right.
some of the best acting as Jason that I've done. Like I feel like
Right.
that was all acting with me there. Then Never Hike in the Snow. And then
Yep.
we did something called The Lost Tapes, which was like
Mhm.
this experimental found footage film that I made with the guys at Odyssey of the Odd, where we like basically these like YouTubers break into Camp Crystal Lake, get themselves into a situation, and then have to escape Crystal Lake with Jason chasing them. And it's all found footage. It's all filmed with a phone.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's really cool. It's very like the lowest budget thing we did. It doesn't make a lot of sense because it was sort of an experiment, but we released it because it was a lot of fun.
Right.
And there's some great kills in it. So it was really
Ah.
cool. And of course we did Never Hike Alone 2. And then I did something called Jason Meets the
Jason's.
Wolfman. And so I played
What?
Jason in that as yeah, that was just a trailer. So that's a trailer on the Womps Film site that we have there. Jason Meets the Wolfman or Versus the Wolfman, which was a concept trailer that we did by a good friend of mine, Stephen Wolf. That was his project.
Right.
But yeah, so I played Jason a bunch of times, and every time it's just a lot of fun. I always liken it to putting on the Iron Man suit. You're
Hmm.
fully enveloped. I have gloves on, I have a hood on, I have the mask on
Hmm.
my face. You can't see me, you can't see my expressions,
No.
you can't see where I'm looking, and it's from the inside I just sort of feel it, and I just want to emote it. And
Hmm.
of course, I have to share this role on the Never Hike series on the three major films with Brian Forrest, who does a very good job of doubling me. We work
Hmm.
together in tandem. In fact, if you follow Cody Wilkins, our effects artist, he actually just recently released a little behind the scenes of Brian and I working together, stepping through
I'm so
the.
sorry.
It's all good. I love dogs. Uh, Stepping through sort of like the steps for one of the final kill sequences and stuff like that. So it's definitely a challenge to share the role with somebody. It's by necessity. Um, because I can't always be behind the mask. There's sometimes so many technical setups that if I'm not behind the camera, then the setups take twice as long. And all of a sudden we're fighting for time versus if Brian's in there, I can just direct him through the action. I can get him through the beats and I can get camera through the beats. And then I'll step in for a little bit more of like the bigger acting moments or, a kill or, every now and then a shooting night will be small enough where I'll just play Jason all night. So there's definitely a mix of the two.
Did you, and this might be weird, but did you actually like go to any of the other actors and ask if there was, any hints or tips?
I mean, no, not really. I've watched enough of the films to know sort of what looks good on screen and what doesn't. And I won't sit here and lie and say that we haven't goofed a few times. There's a couple steps that I haven't been embarrassed by, or that I think it's just a constant watching of it and making sure that no matter what you do, Jason is imposing and scary, and you just want him to look as powerful and scary as at all times. Um, And the real tough part is when you have to break him down into the character of who he is around his mother, because that's when all of that fades. Like he's no longer putting on a front that he's this monster. He's a little boy again. And so I think to see that transition is actually one of the nuanced things that is very hard to do with the character. And, only a few, actors have, Steve Dash to do it a little bit. I think Derek Mears did it a little bit. So there's been little hints and flashes of it, but I don't think people have really seen that other side of Jason, of like who he was before he was the murderer. And so we try to let that shine through in the Never Hike series, as it's kind of our added touch to what we do more than a lot of the actors. I've talked to the other actors. I've obviously, worked with Kane. I've worked with CJ. I've met Steve and some of the other guys, obviously friends with Doug. So we talk about it. We really haven't talked about, I think it would be fun to sit down and talk about the portrayal of him. You know what I mean?
Right.
To see how they see it. I've obviously listened to Kane talk about it a bunch. I got to work with Kane on the Friday the 13th video game when we directed the free kick kill. I had to work with him through that, and just being there on site for that was, I listened to a lot of what he had to say about the character. And I do like a lot of his theories. I think he plays it a very specific way. He's got the big deep, like the tilt. He really emphasizes that stuff. I think Ghost Jason's a little bit more subtle, but I also think Ghost Jason is a little bit more. He is the Clint Eastwood and El Torino of Jasons, I guess you could say. He's older. He just doesn't want to take any shit. He's not taking any extra movements. And so,
get off my lawn.
Yeah, he's not as energetic, I guess you could say. And I think that like Ghost Jason really starts off slow, and then he slowly but surely turns into a freight train. And once he gets going, we get to see what happens with all the fun stuff in Never Hike Alone too.
Oh yeah, no, you guys went ballistic with the kills. Like, I don't want to spoil any of them, just in case if someone's checking this out beforehand. But there are some vicious kills. What is it like filming one of those?
Oh, that was fun. I mean, like the big kill at the end of the movie for Jason at the hospital.
Right.
That was the most fun. And in fact, we had sort of had a malfunction the first time we tried to shoot that thing, and we shot one or two attempts at it, and then we were running out of light and we couldn't shoot anymore, and so we had to save it for another day. So his actual kill was filmed maybe months later. And I can't tell you, like, it was one of those things where like we got to redo that. So when we got to the chance to redo it, trust me, I came in there like, we're gonna make this one count. This one's not gonna look bad. Like, we promised the audience something special.
Yeah.
So let's make this something special. Like, I wanted a very specific thing where I was like, I just want blood to reach both ends of of the screen. And Cody looked at me, the guy who does all of our fabrication, and he said, I got you. And so him and Nora worked hard on that, and we were able to up the old tip to a man. They're like, I rewired it. So it would just explode as big as possible. So that was a lot of fun. I smashed the hell out of that thing. And it was a lot of frustration I was taking out on that dummy head. So
I'm sure because it looks gorgeous.
Thank you.
On the screen. So congratulations on that. I love we get some finality with Yabang. I do like that we get that face off, because Tommy has gone crazy this entire time, and he is the only cop still standing since 6. So what was it like actually finishing that storyline off?
It was bittersweet. I will say this, Rick used to survive. He was one of the core survivors in the original script when I wrote this film 6 years ago.
Wow.
There was a whole additional scene where, they got out into the hospital parking lot, and they, everything was kind of messed up. So they ran across the street to where the police station was. And there was a showdown that happened in the police station, and the person who was supposed to get smashed to pieces was Deputy Dispatch, who was there, who sort of comes in guns blazing, trying to impress the boss, and ends up getting himself murdered pretty hard. And there was a scene where, like Jason took a bullet to the face from Rick. And there was a whole sequence where it split the ghost hawk in half, and the
Oh,
mask fell
really?
off, and we're gonna do a face reveal, and then Deputy Dickhead comes in and starts shooting up the jail cells. Jason chases after him, ends up killing him in a back equipment hallway, and in that equipment hallway he sees his original mask from part 7 all like stitched back together, and he takes that and puts on his original mask and continues the rest of the movie as his original self. This was like the big
Wow.
idea, big budget studio version of it.
Right.
But obviously when we're doing a fan film, we had to scale it back. So when we scaled it all the way back, bringing it back to the original question, it was, I had to look at Rick and go like, I think it's time for Rick to meet his end. But in the end, you're looking at your arc is this. It is, you've been blaming Tommy for all these years. It's not entirely your fault. The curse has been nudging you in that direction. The dream that he has, obviously we see what he's thinking about. We see that he's researching Tommy, that he can't put together any other pieces but Tommy being the bad guy here.
Right.
But for him to sort of come to the realization that he is wrong and then put his life on the line so everyone else can escape is sort of a redemption arc for him. Now, it's not a full, you can't fully forgive him for everything, but you can't blame him for trying type thing.
Right.
So I just wanted Rick, if anything, to go out in a blaze of glory. He's been talking all this smack for 2 movies,
Yep.
the laser gun, the whole thing. So we just wanted to unleash him and see Rick at full power. And I gotta say, I think my favorite line in the movie is, Tommy telling Rick, like, you don't know what you're dealing with, and he goes, it's the other way around. Just such a, I don't know.
It's a cowboy act. And he's like,
know.
"Oh, you're dead."
Oh my God. I know. He's like, oh my God. You know what I mean? It's just, I think that was the fun. I think that's where the fun part of the film comes. We don't like, obviously we wanted it to be serious, and we kept a serious tone, but at the same time, this is a Friday the 13th film. We do want to have a little bit of fun.
Right.
Can't be boring all the time. So yeah, having Rick there really kind of like brightened up the scenes, and every scene that Vinny was in, he brought a lot. So I was just very fortunate to work with him as over all these over the last 2 films and over all these years, and it's just been a pleasure. So I was sad to see him go, but at the same time, we're not getting any more of these films going to the future. So I said,
Right.
Rick, if we ever Van, if we ever do another one, it would be in the past anyway, so you're still alive, so don't worry about it.
Right, right. Yeah, and you do end the movie in a very like, is he or isn't he kind of way. And is that set on purpose? Do you still have stories that you keep thinking of?
Listen, I could tell a new Friday the 13th story every year. I mean, I would never stop. I can go in both directions. I could,
Mm.
I can tell stories of the past, of the future, whatever. I think that, I've said this since day one, like, you can't really close the door on Friday the 13th. And I think if you do, it's sort of disservice to the fans to say like, no, we killed Jason. Ha ha. That's it. It's like,
Right.
no, we wanted to say that, like, if Jason wanted to, he can get right back up, put his head on and keep going.
Right.
It wouldn't even matter. You know what I mean? I think what I wanted to say with this was that Jason is finally at rest.
Mhm.
When we get to the end of the movie, this is going to be a complete spoiler cast, but fine. It's been out for 2 weeks. We already got a
Yeah,
million
it's
views.
gotten a million.
Yeah, come on, it's the million. It's spoiler free. It's gone after a million views. So
That's right.
when I think Tommy is half right. I've been alluding to this that Tommy is half right. Yes, when Jason destroys that head, he feels like he has nothing left to be here for. And when that happens, his mother's spirit shows up to reassure him that she wasn't in the head. He didn't really
Right.
have to protect the head.
Right.
She was there all along, and she'll
Mhm.
always be there. And he doesn't have to stay there, and he doesn't have to do anything. He can just rest. He
Right.
doesn't have to come back from the dead to protect her. Her spirit is intact. Her spirit is in the lake. So he can join her in the lake, and they can be together again. And let's leave all this behind us. It's time to move on.
Right.
And so Jason at the bottom of the lake is that bubble a, hey, I'm still coming for you, or is a sort of relief? I'm here to rest. And then
Right.
obviously we have our post credit scene, and I think that was it's kind of like a double meaning. One, we wanted to get everybody an answer to who Hiker Man 5000 is, because
So good.
he obviously was a fan favorite coming out of the first one. Everybody wanted to, like, Hiker Man 5000 became like a big hit. And so for a long time I've been like, I want to bring Hiker Man 5000 to the screen. And
Mm-hmm.
Hiker Man 5000 embodies womp stomp energy. When the
Mm-hmm.
studios won't make it for you, make it yourself. You know what I
Right,
mean? So
right.
it's sort of like an echoed version of like Ryan, who's a really good friend of mine. He's playing me. That's me
Yeah.
on stage saying, hey, you know what, studios, if you're not going to make Friday the 13th, I'm going to do it. And just like, me, Ryan's out there saying, hey, if Andrew's going to shut down the site and he's not going to be a trail junkie, well, I'm going to be the trail junkie and I'm going to pick up right where he left off,
Pick
which,
up.
and just like, and so it's kind of funny that he, in a way sort of is going to, they just spent all this time putting Jason away and he could potentially undo it all,
Right.
which is really fun. And I will say that there is a story that I could tell with Ryan's character that would be really earnest and
Mm-hmm.
sweet. Um, and as a spoiler alert, it would have nothing to do with Jason, but there is a horror movie involved that he can get himself into a lot of trouble.
Oh, wow.
And we've talked about it, me and the Honest of the Odd guys, about maybe telling his story someday.
Right.
I it would technically be part of the Never Hike Alone verse, but I think we'd call it Hiker Man 5000.
You have to.
But yeah, I think that it's just going to be the story of this kid who gets in over his head
Mm-hmm.
more than he knows. And it's also a story of don't meet your heroes.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of a little twist, Kyle in there, where what really did happen to Kyle after Never Hike Alone? Because he seemed fine leaving.
Right.
But as we know, the curse
Things.
works in mysterious ways.
Oh, wow.
So you know what I mean?
Wow.
And that actually stems back to the original sequel to Never Hike Alone that I came up with maybe 7 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
where the whole premise of the story was that Kyle went missing. He came
Mm-hmm.
back, he survived, everything looked good for a while, and then one day he disappeared, and nobody
Mm-hmm.
knows where he is. And so it's sort of like a little bit of that. It's like, where did Kyle go? What happened to Kyle? You got,
Right.
the guy kicking around where he last was, and then we sort of kind of play it out from there as its own little cat and mouse game.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds really dope, man.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. All right. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I do got one more question before we plug that Indiegogo.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier this year, I watched a film, 13 Fanboy,
Okay.
and you are in this film,
Mm-hmm.
and produced that I saw, and I found it wildly interesting that not only do you play yourself, you actually play like the killer, and I just want to know what was it like getting that, like, hey, by the way, you're going to be the one doing it all.
Yeah. So how about I found that out the first day on set? I always, yeah, I knew that I was going to be stunt doubling. That's what I was told, that I would be the stunt double. I'd be doing all the action scenes, and I had done it for the teaser too, so I wasn't surprised by that. And I, the whole time as I watched it grow, I was like, "This is going to be cool. This is going to be cool. I'm going to get to go fight
Yeah.
Kane Hodder and CJ Graham, and all these different things, and I got to be prepared for this role." And Deb wanted to keep the role so secret; she didn't even tell me until I got. And she just trusted me that I could learn dialogue that fast and do it. And luckily for her, like, it's actually a pretty good trait of mine that I can memorize. I can memorize scenes pretty quickly if given the chance to just study it for a little bit.
Right.
And from there, it was just a dream come true. I get to work with some of my heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, got to fight Kane Hodder, got to fight CJ Graham, got to murder a bunch of people, got to put a drill through Tracy Savage's head, which started the relationship that now she does. She is our in-house news reporter for the Never Hike Alone series.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So it's definitely opened up a lot of doors for me. It was a great experience. I think when Deb told me, I kind of said, like, you know what, Deb, it kind of makes sense. I am that
Mm-hmm.
fan. Like, I am that guy who's that obsessed. I just happen to put all my energy into making a movie rather than killing all of you.
Right.
So be thankful that we grew up in that multiverse and not the other.
I love
But
that.
it's kind of funny. And so, like, when I approached playing myself as this character, I just sort of, said, like, what would happen if, I did all the work that I did, and then every alumni I talked to snubbed me and made me feel like crap, and like all these
Yeah.
different things, like where would I be emotionally? And I just sort of went there, and then just, Deb's dialogue did the rest. She had me doing a bunch of really weird stuff, and I was just like, whatever you want, Deb, I got you. Like, let's do it. So it was a fun time. I got to, and I got to hang out with Andrew Lady. I got to hang out with Haley Greenbauer.
Hmm.
So the three of us who are friends, in real life, getting to chill and,
Make a
basically
movie.
be flown to New Mexico, make a movie. It was just a really great experience all around.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do enjoy the film, and you should check that out as well as Never Hike Alone 2, which right now is on YouTube on Womp Stomp Films YouTube page. You also have an Indiegogo where today you released that you can get the Ghost Jason mask if you
Hmm.
back it. I got my Blu-ray pre-ordered, ready to come in
Right.
February, so I'm excited. But yes, please plug away all the stuff.
Yeah, so we're going to keep the Indiegogo open through at least the end of the year, if not into early next year, for all pre-orders and Blu-rays. I'm going to be spending the next few months getting all of the fulfillment stuff ready. We have to order more stuff because obviously we sold more stuff than last year. So we got that working for us. So if you want to go to the Indiegogo, you can get there like through any of our pages. In fact, there's a link under the Never Hike Alone 2 YouTube page that will bring you right to it. We have normal Blu-rays, the first edition. We have the Jarvis versus Jason Blu-rays, which will be coming in red cases. We
Mm,
may be also including a second disc where you can add a legacy disc to your case. So say you wanted to put the Ghost Cut and Never Hike Alone 2 in one case. That would be a pretty good way to do it, right? So,
right.
yeah, so we're doing that. So we're working on that stuff. Obviously, we released the Battle Hawk today, so the version of the mask with the axe mark and the shotgun blast is now available both as a combo pack and as a singular mask. And we have a few more things that are going to be releasing over the next few weeks. Now that the film is out, there are certain props that we no longer have to hide, like a headless Jason corpse that we pulled up from the bottom of the lake, and all of the effects that were worn by our actors who were hit with axes or arrows or any of those things. All of those things are going to start to become available. You'll be able to own a piece of the movie. We do have associate producers and co-producers who back the film who are going to get to pick through the pile first.
Hmm.
But once they're done, we have a lot of really cool stuff for people to get, and then we got to do all that stuff. Obviously, the film is playing on YouTube, so watch it. Also, watch the other films if you haven't. So watch The Ghost Cut, watch Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, Disappeared. Let's get those play counts up and send a message to this that when it's time to bring back to the big screen, that they already got the person they need. He's right here, and we'd be happy to take the mantle and do the things that we're doing now on a much bigger scale. And just like that scene that I pitched to you before, we don't have to do the low budget version anymore. Like, let's go to
Right.
some of these ideas that I have that are up in that echelon of fun, doing things with Jason we've never seen before, and keeping it in a storyline that fans are going to accept and say, I can accept this as my Jason. Please keep giving me more.
Right. Oh my God. Well, Vincent DiSanti, I am praying that that day comes that I get to go to the movie theater and see you direct a Friday the 13th film. Make sure you follow all his stuff. Thank you once again for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.